Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Darren and I just got out of one of my finals, got back home, gonna be studying for another final, so I do not have a lot of time currently to make a video. But I do want to express a little bit of my thoughts in this video. This footage of us literally stomping Alliance, it was just to the point where it became a farm, so this footage doesn't really show off skill, but it does show some random moments of Outlaw dealing insane amounts of damage that is pretty common, but sometimes you're never really lucky to get the buffs you need, or a team that can be there to take your tricks buff. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about some of the changes happening to Subtlety, and this is more or less an informal discussion. I'm not trying to cover a change in particular. I'm not trying to be the most formal about it or informative. This is more just my own thoughts spreading out into a video. But I'll have the link for it below. What Blizzard has been doing as of recent is trying to buff Backstab as much as possible, and it just seems like such a bad design choice altogether. I've been trying to understand why they're buffing Backstab, and I am going to go through a process of testing Backstab on the PTR, but it just seems like such a I don't want to say dumb, I don't want to say weird, but it's almost like disillusioned idea. It's as if Blizzard thinks, or whoever is the dev designing these changes, believes that Backstab is an ability that can actually be somewhat viable when it comes to PvP, or even PvE. They've had a few changes to Gloomblade to make a Backstab version, basically just transformative Backstab, which is Gloomblade, be a little bit more effective in terms of the damage increase. They did nerf it recently, so maybe Backstab does have some kind of a possibility for the damage increase, and maybe it was actually doing more damage than a Shadow Strike. But with the system that they got for Subtlety right now, ever since they changed the Shadow Dance mechanic, instead of being a 1-minute cooldown, Backstab and Ambush, before this whole system got changed, had an interesting, intricate, intimate relationship. And I felt that it was pretty fucking good. Basically, in a way, and they could have just made this into one ability. You'll have Backstab unless you have Stealth or Shadow Dance available, where your Backstab becomes an ambush and costs 40 energy. So when you're bursting, your basic common point builder transforms and becomes a much more powerful tool, generates a lot more common points, and allows you to feel powerful, allows you to feel bursty, allows you to feel that you have control, because if you have more common points, easier to line up kidneys, because you have stealth, it's easier to get cheap shots in, and then you're doing overall more damage. But ever since they changed the system to charges, which was an interesting way of going about it, and I'm not really trying to say anything bad about the charge system. I think it's an interesting system and something for us to explore. But I am kind of glad they're also starting to walk away from it little by little, just a little bit, in the next PTR patch, allowing Subtlety to deal some real burst damages that I haven't sustained. But they created this new system between Backstab and Shadow Strike, where Backstab isn't an ability anymore. And I don't know why it's even on the bars. Nobody uses Backstabs. There's no real ever reason to use Backstabs, because you spend a lot of time in Shadow Dance. Shadow Dance isn't a bursty cooldown where you have ability to ambush your enemies. Shadow Dance is basically part of your rotation, more or less. And maybe in future PTR builds it might be possible to make Backstab something worth of an ability, but even then, I don't believe that I believe they basically ruined the relationship between Backstab and an X ability. In the past it was Ambush, now it is Shadow Strike. Ever since Legion came out and with Subtlety, there's no reason to ever use Backstab, and they keep buffing it on PTR. They recently even changed one of the Symbols of Death abilities, which I thought was personally a dumb idea, but they changed it so now when you use Symbols of Death, you gain a bunch of buffs. You gain a buff for your Shadow Strike, so it will generate 2 additional common points, and they changed the whole mobility with Shadow Strike, so they made it a little bit more viable to have it generate more common points, especially in your opener. So it's basically with premeditation 4 common points in a single opener, which is awesome because it allows you to do your setup. It allows Nightblade to deal 30% more damage, but they removed that part. They removed the 30% more damage from Nightblade, which I thought was fine. I thought Nightblade being part of a dot, it's almost like buffing a Rupture, because Nightblade is basically Rupture, just a magical dot instead of a bleed. And I felt that buffing up by 30% and having some kind of dot damage to an extent was fine for Subtlety, and there was one way to mitigate the damage, but they scratched it out completely. They still kept the Eviscerate part for 35% chance, which I'm glad, but then they added a new one for Backstab. Now Backstab generates 2 additional combo points, and I don't understand it. I don't understand why Backstab. Why do you keep buffing Backstab? Unless they go and buff if they were to give a talent where Shadow Dance becomes a 1 minute cooldown, no ability for you to get cooldowns back for it, but it allows you to deal more damage, like the 30% damage increase that it has if you do select a specific talent on the BTR. But if you made it one charge and even more damage, then it would give you capabilities to allow for Backstab and Ambush to be basically one and the same ability. When you have Stealth, you use Ambush. When you don't have Stealth, you use Backstab. But as of current patch 7.2, without testing on 7.25, I would have to say that Backstab is just a more or less a useless ability. And it wasn't the players, it wasn't the community that made the ability useless. It is more or less the developers themselves that basically turned the ability into what I would call a useless mess. It's there, but it doesn't quite do anything. At least back in Warlords General, Backstab would advance your bleed. So if you have a bunch of bleeds rolling on an enemy, when you shiv at your enemy, the bleeds would tick, and based on mastery, it would advance your bleeds, allowing you to have faster bursts. It's almost like how Assassination has Exsanguinate for your bleeds to advance a little bit faster than their average rate. And this is more of a similar thing from back in Warlords. And at the time, Backstab had a reason. I think it'd be kind of cool if for a design choice they did make Backstab an ability that's worth something. Maybe they made it function with Nightblade, where you have Nightblade and your Backstab has a chance to proc Nightblade a little bit faster, creating a little bit more of an interesting mechanic of you're playing with this Nightblade and Backstab for more sustained damage, and then you're playing with Shadow Strikes and Eviscerates for more bursty damage, and then you would have different playstyles. I just don't know how Blizzard are gonna work Backstab out, but it's just so weird to just see buffs for the ability back to back to back, and then changing the traits for it so you can deal more critical strike damage. And then they're buffing they're even buffing the Symbols of Death for Backstab, and they're buffing Symbols of Death in general for your 4-piece for PvE. But for PvP, I just cannot, in the current state, see Backstab being viable. I am going to be testing this in the future, but I just wanted to throw my thoughts out there. This isn't a conventional formal video of me discussing the exact changes that's been happening in the PTR. This is more or less me voicing my own opinions and concerns about Backstab and kind of the direction where rogues are going, because the last thing I would want rogues to be is having a bunch of useless abilities that you almost never barely use. But anyway, that's all I got for you guys. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. My finals are almost done, so I'll be back to making quality cringy videos as always whenever I have free time. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below, as always.